Zen koan today that talks about compassion. And in Zen Buddhist liturgy, there isn't a lot written about compassion. Zen, the spirit of Zen, very much emerges from direct experience and what could be called immediate awakening to the real. So this is where Zen has its particular strength, and like everything else, every system and every person, we're a mix of strengths and weaknesses. So the real strength is to point to immediate awakening, and so there's a lot of emphasis often on insight and wisdom in the Zen tradition. And compassion may be seen often as more as a natural emergent result of real wisdom, is that compassion can then appear. In other traditions, including many that are taught and expressed very well here, compassion is more front and center from the beginning, the practice of metta and other approaches. But with such a wide subject as Buddhism, we have different leanings within the traditions, all to look into this wild and curious human life that we are, each one of us, that we all are. So I'm going to bring us case 54 of the Book of Equanimity. In this particular Zen koan, it's in a couple of different traditions, and this is actually, and I like the introduction in the Blue Cliff record, so I'm going to read a couple of different versions here. Okay, just two introductions. First one's from the Blue Cliff record. It's both about the same koan, but maybe a different flavor. So the introduction here: even if your whole body were eyes, you still couldn't see it. Even if your whole body were ears, you still couldn't hear it. Even if your whole body were a mouth, you still couldn't say it. Even if your whole body were mind, you still couldn't perceive it. Leaving aside the whole body for the moment, without eyes, how would you see? Without ears, how would you hear? Without a mouth, how would you speak? Without a mind, how would you perceive? If you can unfurl a pathway here, you'll be a fellow student with the ancient Buddhas. But leaving aside study for the moment, tell me, from whom do you study? So that's from the Blue Cliff record, the Rinzai Zen tradition. If you can unfurl a pathway here, you'll be a fellow student with the ancient Buddhas. But from whom do you study? Okay, now here's the introduction from the Book of Equanimity. The 8 compass points are bright and clear. The 10 directions are unobstructed. Everywhere bright light shakes the earth. All the time there is marvelous functioning and the supernatural. Tell me, how can this occur? So in the first introduction, how can you understand? How can this occur? Okay, so to the main case. Attention, Ungan asked Dogo, what does the great compassionate Bodhisattva do when she uses her manifold hands and eyes? The great compassionate Bodhisattva, what does she do when she uses her many manifold hands and eyes? Dogo said, it's like a person reaching behind them at night to search for their pillow. Ungan said, I understand. Dogo said, what do you understand? Ungan said, all over the body are hands and eyes. Dogo said, you've really said it, and you've got 80% of it. Ungan said, elder brother, how about you? Dogo replied, throughout the body are hands and eyes. So rather than all over the body of hands and eyes, throughout the body of hands and eyes. So a little explanation of the protagonists here and what's going on and what's being talked about. And we're talking about Avalokiteshvara, or Kuan Yin, Chinese, and Kanon, Japanese, all talking about the same figure, the Bodhisattva deity, an archetype that was developed in the Mahayana tradition, the archetype of manifest compassion, the embodiment of compassion. And that was distilled into an image, and perhaps I'm sure many of you have seen the image of Kuan Yin. And one image of Kuan Yin, probably one of the less popular images, maybe because it's more complicated to pull off as a statue or in artwork, but the Kuan Yin, or Avalokiteshvara, has 1,000 hands and eyes. It's this archetype of the embodiment of compassion has 1,000 eyes in order to see everyone and everything in the world all of the time, see what's going on, and then seeing what's going on, 1,000 hands to be able to help, to be able to extend. So this is where this 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes come from in the embodiment of compassion. In the koan, there are two Zen monks having a conversation about this. They're both quite been at a temple for many years and were teachers in their own right. In the tradition, it's thought of that they were actual brothers. They always show up together and have these dialogues in several places talking about points of practice, points of the dharma. Ungan and Dogo. And Ungan asks, what does the great compassionate bodhisattva do when she uses these many hands and eyes? Another way maybe we could put that is, what is the function of compassion? Or what is compassion ultimately? Like we could ask ourselves that question. What is compassion? You know, how do we understand that word? You know, you look back at the etymology of the word. It's an interesting word. Goes back to the Latin, compassio. Right? Originally, that word meant to suffer with, right? To feel somebody else's pain or to feel someone else's suffering. And later, it came to have the implication not only to suffer with, but to want to help. To suffer with and to want to help. It's kind of like the root of the root of the word here. So if we understand compassion in that way, to feel, to have genuine, to have care, to have empathetic connection, to care about someone or something else, and to want to do the best that we can to alleviate the suffering that's in another or in ourselves. This is really core Buddhism, right? It's sort of Buddhism 101. Whether we come at it from wisdom or compassion or whatever angle that we might approach from, the whole tradition is rooted in the Buddha's articulating very well that as a human being, living as the human condition, as all of us are, we're always presented with the fact of dukkha, or dissatisfaction, suffering, difficulty. And even if we've got all our ducks in a row and everything's, just going fine, thank you, we understand that is time-bound. Like, it might be going well now. How about next week, next month, next year? Right? So it's always subject to the truth of impermanence. And even if we're doing very well, thank you, at the moment, how far do we have to look to find suffering elsewhere? Just on the human, if we just take the human level and mind the natural world and everything else, but just on the human level in our own relationship with family, with friends, with community. I see that more and more it seems to come to the fore, just how much people are dealing with. How much difficulty, just genuine, almost impossible level challenge of difficulty. I know so many people who are in that place right now. I'm sure you do too. And so this question arises, like, what is perhaps my place within that? Or how can we help? How can we do a better job of it? Because as we look into the world, we just see the world is on fire in many different ways, in many different places. Right? So in all of this time, since the Buddha may have diagnosed the cause of a lot of suffering inherent in the human condition and in the world, but the work to assuage that or to end that is continuing. Yeah, I'm not sure how much progress we've made. Hard to say. But where can you also, like, where is that progress made? Like, how do we approach the world? How do we approach our life and the life of others with compassion? What is compassion? Ungan asked Dogo. Dogo said, it's like a person reaching behind them at night to search for their pillow. This is quite a storied and highly regarded response in Zen understanding. So many things you could say there. Like, like in a description of compassion, if we had to come up with, how does compassion function? He chooses to use this example. Right? Every one of us here has experienced this at some point. Right? In the middle of the night, without even any conscious thought, one's head slips off the pillow, and then very kindly the arm goes up, pulls the pillow, and pulls it under the head. Simple, natural, fundamental functioning of compassion. So a great example. And Ungan in response says, I understand. I understand. Like, how do we understand that? This is the crux of the koan in this sense. Right? So koans, which can appear so challenging or vexing, when we read them, it's like, what are they really, why don't they just bring out the point? Why is it hidden in this kind of riddle language? Right? Like, we laugh because everyone's familiar with that. Get to the point. What are they really saying? But when we're talking about the very substance of our nature, the substance of the world, the substance of this life, it goes beyond our dualistic understanding of it. Right? We have this dualistic consciousness where we're always separating and comparing and contrasting. This is the way that we understand the world. But the substance of the world, the very basis of this Buddha nature, this original nature that we all are without exception, is not appearing dualistically. It's appearing as everyone and everything all together, all at once, all the time. That's us now. That's the heart of our meditation practice. That's the heart of the Dharma. Here we are. And always here we are. And it's always this, seamlessly, constantly, showing the world appearing, this life appearing. I understand. But how do we understand that? In another volume, a modern Zen teacher, a contemporary Zen teacher, commenting on this case, says that Avalokiteshvara, or Canon, the Bodhisattva of compassion, doesn't understand compassion. Doesn't understand compassion. And that can seem counterintuitive. Well, like, what do you mean? The embodiment of compassion doesn't understand compassion? But perhaps you see here, right? If you look closer, if you go beyond the dualism of Avalokiteshvara, understanding what compassion is, or it's talking about us ultimately, understanding what compassion is, then we make it something outside ourselves. We call something right. We call something wrong. We call something the compassionate thing to do. But we never really know what the right thing to do is. One of Maizumi Roshi, first successor in the lineage that I'm in, Tetsugen Roshi, brought in a teaching, developed a teaching, talk about how to live in the world with compassion, how to act in the world with compassion, how to navigate this world well, which is what everyone here wants to do, I would claim. Everybody here is interested in living this life and living in this world well. We're using the time well and promoting benefit as much as possible and letting go of suffering or dukkha as much as possible. That's fair to say. That's the heart of a Dharma practitioner. To wake up to that, to see that we are all called to do that. And Bernie in his teaching talked about 3 points toward living in this way. Not knowing, bearing witness, and healing. Not knowing, bearing witness, and healing. So the very basis of our experience, when we look, is one of not knowing. Right? This is what we experience in our sitting, in our meditation. Or we can see that, or really come to see that. You know, we have this churn of thought, which is always exploring the world, valuing things, comparing things, navigating, right? Our human brains are wired in this way where we're always, I was reading about this recently, just about prediction and steering. So we're imagining where we're going, and then we're working out how to get there in just 10,000, in 10,000 different ways. And so we come to a time where we're just sitting, and there's really nothing to do. There's nothing to predict. It's happening. There's nowhere to go. We're there. And there's nowhere to steer. There's nothing to do. And that is flummoxing to the narrower sense of me, I, self, that is involved in, well, no, this work, I got to think about what's next and how to get there. And that dominates and runs so much of our experience. So much so that when it comes to a time of sitting, you find that, oh, that's just running and it's hard to, you can't turn it off. This is like one of the essential aspects of real stillness and sitting, is rather than not trying to turn it off, right, but just let it play and have no concern for it. No concern for that prediction and steering. Let it go. And then you see this experience at its root, when you make direct contact with this essential nature, what is it? Who are you? Who are you? Right? Like, who is this one here? Now, we can think of lots of things to say there, right? And many people, you know, in many different disciplines can, you know, look into that. But Zen or Dharma is experiential. Like, when you actually look, what can you say that you understand? Right? In one of the introductions that I read here, it said, all the time there is marvelous functioning and the supernatural. How can this occur? And it's not talking about ghosts and spirits bouncing around the place, perhaps, right? But this supernatural now, this extraordinary mystery that we're all involved in. Not the basis is not knowing, don't know. And we apply this when we look out into the world and every situation and all of our experience. if we have this basis, or really a non-basis, of dwelling in a real healthy maybe, not sure, finding outedness, right? Don't know. Like, it's like reaching for a pillow in the middle of the night. You don't need to know anything about that or have any opinion about that. There's just the natural functioning. In the same way, in our waking life, right? To become a person of presence, right? That's what this practice is. It's this awakening that we talk about is returning to our base natural awareness, our most essential being. And coming face to face with realizing I can't rely on a description of what this is or what it all means and where I'm going, because I don't know. We all know that on some level. Actually, don't know. And then next, to bear witness. To bear witness. Bear witness to our life. To this life. I say, my life, your life, we use these terms to understand, but in actuality, it's not my life or your life. We didn't sign a lease or get a title, get a title to it, right? It's just we appeared in the world one day as life, and it's been life all the way through. So there is life, but it's not mine or yours. And so we bear witness to the experience that we are, however that's showing up. Right now in the room, there's this. We bear witness from a place of not knowing, dropping preconceptions, right? Not being blocked by ideas of how it could be, should be, ought to be, which we're so prone to as human beings, but just having always been able to return to a fresh look. A new leaf, a fresh slate. Look and bear witness to actually how it is. But it takes great courage too, and conviction to do so. Because as we look into our world, whether it's local, like just in our own household, our own street, our own community, or if we dare, broaden that out a little more and broaden that out a little more to bear witness to the world as it is challenging. And it's easy to become overwhelmed by the world, by causes and conditions. And especially to become overwhelmed by the world, if we have this compass pointing in the right direction of, I don't want people to suffer. We don't want the world to suffer. We need to do something about this. But how? And often we can feel paralyzed about how to do something, how to take care of things. But we can take care of putting a pillow behind our head in the middle of the night. No problem. And in our sphere of activity, I say no problem for most of us. Some people can't do that. Right? But in our sphere of activity, on where we live and in our day, that natural functioning of compassion, the hands and eyes, looking at the world and looking at everything around us, that functioning is taking place all of the time. How do we meet what's in front of us? Compassion, you can say, might arise from right action of the Eightfold Path, a correct functioning, appropriate functioning. This is where we gain an extraordinarily powerful allyship from the whole of the world, our original nature. When we just wake up to the present and take a clean look and experience things as they are, as closely aligned to what's real. And to see things and then to let the function come forward. From a place of not knowing, bearing witness, then the third one, healing. or taking action can take place. Whereas for originally in Bernie's teaching, this was, the third one was healing, and later it was changed to taking action. And, you know, I have great respect for the Zen Peacemakers organization. I think, like, I'm not sure, but I think, like, taking action, that's a better rallying call, you know, for an organization that's involved in peacemaking. But taking action is healing. Taking action is healing when it's appropriate, when it's the appropriate function. So Ungan says, I understand this, grabbing the pillow in the middle of the night. Doga said, what do you understand? All over the body are hands and eyes. You talk about Kuan Yin with 1,000 hands and eyes. You can see if you look it up online, they have these amazing statues of Kuan Yin with the hands and the eyes all over. If you look at and all of the faces, many faces of Kuan Yin, and if you look at it, these statues closely, you'll see one or two of the faces will have like almost a kind of nasty or mean look on the face. But that's still a face of compassion. Right? To remind us that compassion isn't always about being nice. Compassion isn't always about being indulgent or like help or what's good, what's right, what's appropriate. Doesn't always feel good, doesn't always look good. Right? We can't go, if we go in through life with just these parameters of what's good, what's right, and how things should be, they never quite match. They might match 70% or 80%, like it says in the koan. It never matches 100%. There are always exceptions. And in the statue of Canon, 1,000 hands and eyes all over the body, if you take off those hands and eyes, is it still Kuan Yin, the statue? If you take off the head, is it still Kuan Yin? If you take off the legs, is it still Kuan Yin? Everything is like this in the world. It's like when I first got interested in Zen, I was reading in a book about it, and it gave the example of an apple. And it said, you take a bite from an apple, is it still an apple? Yeah, broadly agreed, still an apple. Take another bite, still an apple? Yeah, keep going. Now it's less than half. Now it's a core. Is it still an apple? At what point does it become not an apple? Everything is that way. Same thing with me, I. Same thing with a person. We use these labels, these ways to organize the world. But at the root, as you get down to the basis, not knowing, not sure, the labels no longer fit. You've really said it. You've got 80%, Ungan asked. How about you, elder brother? And Dogo replied, throughout the body are hands and eyes. So that's our difference. Like in the first example, 80%, hands and eyes all over. The person, the bodhisattva, the Buddha, and all of these ways to help and engage. But where is the Buddha? Where is Avalokiteshvara? Where am I? Where is all of that located? Where is that found? If you look to the bottom, you find nothing there. Trust me, I've looked. You know, I say that though but that's in the ridiculous effort to find something, to look and look and look and look and look until you see there's nothing to be found, and yet that nothing is all of this in every direction. At the beginning of the Heart Sutra, it says Avalokiteshvara, or Kuan Yin, doing deep prajna paramita. Doing deep prajna paramita. Prajna is wisdom, paramita. So Avalokiteshvara doing deep wisdom looking. Right? Like really drill down. Hyper focus right here, right? Like right into the real. Clearly saw the emptiness of all the five conditions, all the five skandhas, everything. Sees the emptiness of everything thus completely relieving misfortune and pain. When I read that, I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. Like, that's all you got to do? But in this example, in the Heart Sutra, to look and to see at the root, you really drill down and you look, yeah, this whole world, this experience, this self, it's all empty. But not empty in a dark, nihilistic, void way. But this precision of Buddhism to look in and to say nothing is separate. Nothing stands alone. Nothing is fixed and defined. But this world, this self, all of us and everything in it is fully, completely interconnected, one body, one world, one life. How extraordinary, as it said in the other introduction, the supernatural all around. Like what, you really look, what is this world? What is this life? But more importantly, or the fruit of the work of really looking, to trust one's innate natural functioning. To see that every one of us that reaches for the pillow in the middle of the night can also navigate a world on fire, and still from a place of presence and a wakefulness and care can engage and respond. Respond appropriately. But what is appropriate? That's a moving target. That can't be defined. It's always fresh, it's always unique.
Hi, I'm Franz with Long Beach Meditation. Your gracious generosity makes this programming possible. If you found this video to be of value, please consider making a donation here. If you'd like to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to stay in touch with Long Beach Meditation, click here to subscribe. Thank you, and may all beings be happy.